What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Lock and Cash podcast. Giving you guys a solo show this week. Bruce is away, handling some stuff. He'll be back soon. Missed last week with the holiday weekend, Mother's Day and all that stuff. Got a little bit overwhelmed, did not have a podcast last week. This weekend, we've got some big games to discuss. We're going to talk about the Mavs-Thunder Game 6 on Saturday. We're going to talk about the big Game 7 in the NBA that we have on Sunday. We'll talk about the NHL as well. Let's just get right into it. We're going to start off with the Mavericks and the Thunder, and I'm going to give you guys some info on this game, where I lean, how I'm looking to play it as of right now. In Game 5, we did have the Mavericks, and we cashed on them as an underdog. I like them in that spot. This series, if you look at the script of this series so far, it's followed the exact same script for the Mavericks' first-round series against the Clippers, right? Where they lost Game 1 pretty big. They got blown out in both Game 1s, stole both Game 2s, took a 2-1 series lead in both series, and then lost Game 4 and then took Game 5 on the road. And then they closed it out in Game 6 at home against the Clippers, but the Clippers were really shorthanded. They're going to try to do that again in this round against the Thunder. They're currently Dallas is -4 on the spread. The Thunder come into this now backs against the wall. We haven't seen them in this spot ever before. They're a very young team. They're catching 4 points on the road. I talked about with the Nuggets Timberwolves Game 6, how road teams that are up 3-2, there's some profitable trends for those teams, similar to the Knicks tonight against the Pacers. When you flip it around, though, it's not so great for teams that are down 3-2 going on the road for Game 6. It kind of changes the script a little bit. So if we look at the home team being up 3-2, coming back home for Game 6, let's see, we can take a look at the data here. Last 20 years, there hasn't been that many spots of this, surprisingly only 29, but the home team is 19-10 against the spread. That's hitting right around 65%. So that's pretty good. That's an indicator for Dallas. The teams that are up 3-2, right, going back home for Game 6. So they stole pivotal Game 5 on the road. I also as of right now, lean to the Mavericks. I think their size has been too much for the Thunder. Once they made the simple adjustment after Game 1 where they were not going to run, they basically decided after Game 1, we're not going to run with Oklahoma City. We're going to walk it up every possession. We're going to give the ball to Doncic in the half court. He's going to be able to facilitate. He's going to be able to slow things down. It did two things. Number one, it took the Thunder's run and gun offense and put it on the sideline. You see how they have to bench Giddey. They have to switch up their minutes. It just hasn't been working that well for them. And the second thing it did is it gave Luka's injury, his knee injury, kind of like lifted a weight off of it a little bit. He doesn't have to do as much. Kyrie's been a really good facilitator in this series as well, handling the ball, passing the ball, getting guys open shots. The lob game has been really big for them to the big guys, to Gafford and Lively. I see that continue. I think the size, the physicality of Dallas is just a little bit too much for this young Thunder team who are not used to this level of basketball, right? It's one thing to run and gun during the regular season. This is a completely different animal. And I think that's, if we look at it really since that adjustment after Game 1, you've played 4 games, right? Dallas has won 3 of them. And the one loss was a very close game where they shot the ball poorly, and it really could have gone either way. The ball could have bounced either way. So for me, I like Dallas. I think 4 is a reasonable number. My lines right now is about 5.5. I would lay 4 with Dallas if you can get that. We'll see where it's at as of Saturday morning. I like to see where the money comes in and how the line reacts to it. But right now, I think the Mavericks are going to close that series out, similar to the way they did against the Clippers. Another thing here to watch out for is teams don't always react this way, but I think the Mavericks will. They see now that the Nuggets and the Timberwolves are headed back to Denver for a Game 7. You close this out on Saturday, you could have a nice little rest advantage over the defending champs who you're going to have to go through. You're going to have to go to one of those two players. You're either going to Minnesota or Denver. So Dallas is going to be the road team. You could have a little bit of a rest advantage here for that team that you're going to play in the Western Conference Finals on the road if you can close this out on Saturday. So I expect a strong effort from the Mavericks. They've won 2 in a row in this series already, right? The Thunder have not been able to do that. So I like Dallas here to close the series out minus the 4 this weekend. All right, how about some hockey over in the NHL playoffs? We do have a big Game 6 between the Oilers and the Canucks. We don't know yet if we're going to get a Game 7 in either of the other 2 series. We'll find out tonight. The Rangers closed out their series. The Panthers and the Stars will have opportunities to do that. We'll see what happens. But as of right now, we got a huge Game 6, and we had the Canucks in Game 5. They gave us a sweaty, nice win as a home dog. And this series has just zigzagged the entire time, right? Vancouver Game 1, Edmonton, Vancouver, Edmonton, Vancouver. So we're at this 3-2 now with the Oilers going back home. Big favorite on the money line here at home. And I think this is one of those games, guys, where you don't overthink it. This series has zigzagged the whole way through. Both teams have been able to win a game in the other team's building. But I just think this is an Oilers game right here. A big bounce back. They only put up 2 goals on the road in Game 5. This is a big bounce back spot for their offense specifically. I think this is one of those games where it's one of those, almost like what you saw with the Timberwolves and the Nuggets, where once the Nuggets got down big early, they just punted that game away, and they just said, we'll regroup back at home. I think you could see that in this game a little bit. It's a little bit different in hockey, but I could see one of these 5-2, 6-2, 6-3 victories, something like that. I think the over will be back in play after the last 2 games have gone under. So I think look for the over 6.5 to be in play here. But the big one here is Edmonton. And if you don't like the big money line price, I think it's around -200 or something around there. This is one of those games where I would not be scared to play this on the 60-minute line. And maybe even the puck line. Yeah, they're -190 right now. I would just play them. I probably will just play the -190. You can lay the puck line and get +130. But if you're scared of the puck line, maybe you get a close game. Maybe the game goes to, maybe it ends in 1 goal differential. Look at the 60-minute line, which will get you Edmonton at -120. I mean, I don't think this is going to be one of those games where they fight to struggle to stay in the series. They're a very good team. This series, before it started, had 7 games written all over it. I would probably play Oilers -190, Oilers on the 60-minute line -120, split your bet up that way in some fashion. But I think this is all Edmonton here. I think we're destined to go back for a Game 7 between these 2 teams. And the Game 7 spot will be interesting because you'll have a home dog in a Game 7. We got to pull the numbers on that if we do get it. So make sure you guys follow us on Twitter, actually, Twitter X, because I post all the trends on there that I don't get to make videos on. So there probably will be some kind of trend posted if we get a Game 7 here about home underdogs in a Game 7. I know unders in a Game 7 are very reliable in the NHL. We already hit one earlier in these playoffs, so look for that as well. But for me in this game, it's Edmonton or pass for me. I love the Oilers in this spot, so -190, 60-minute line, I would lay either one of those. And finally, we have a Game 7 in the NBA between the Nuggets and the Timberwolves. So look, I mentioned earlier in this series that it was kind of a mystery to me. The first 3 games that started off with the road team winning each game just is unlike a lot of things that you've ever seen. You really don't see series like this in the NBA. Then finally, we got back on track a little bit. We hit the Nuggets in games 4 and 5. Game 6, I was on the Nuggets. I thought that they would close it out. I thought that once they won 3 games in a row, they had the Wolves figured out. But we saw the champs do something that I don't think we've ever seen them do. I'd have to go back and look, but I don't remember them doing this in last year's playoffs. Maybe because they never had to, but they basically punted a game away. They basically, once they got down big in the first quarter, they basically started shooting a lot of threes, not really jogging back, not really running back hard on defense, just kind of jogging. And they basically said, hey, we're confident enough that we can go win this at home. And that's what I saw from the Nuggets in Game 6. And they just got the rest of the game, like, people get too obsessed with the final score. Oh my God, they lost by 40 points. That doesn't matter. The game was a loss regardless. You lose a unit on it, whether they lose by 1 or they lose by 50, right? You still lose a unit or 2 units on the game. So the fact that it was a 40-point loss doesn't really mean anything to me. The point is they said this is a wash. We need to rest up for a Game 7. So Denver feels confident at home, and they've been a good home team straight up, but not against the spread this year like they were last year because the lines are inflated this year. Once you win a championship and you dominate at home against the spread, the books are going to adjust. So the Denver lines have all been inflated back at home. So for me, personally in this game, who do I think wins the game, right? Remember, over 80% of the time in the NBA playoffs, if the team that wins is the team that is going to cover, right? So if you can just decide who you think is going to win, you can sometimes be in a good spot. The line right now is 5. I think it's a fair line, right? Denver was 5.5 earlier at home in the series, 4.5 for Game 1. This is right in the middle. All right, it's a 5-point spread. Here's the thing, though. Normally, I would tell you guys run and bet the under, right? Because here, I'll pull up the numbers right now. Game 7 unders in the NBA playoffs the last 20 years, 38 and 23, 62% to the under, right? That gets even better when you consider the fact that it's a less than 3 possessions spread. So this is a 5-point spread. When you look at spreads that are less than 3 possessions in the NBA playoffs, it bumps up to like 68%, 69% to the under. So yeah, expecting a low-scoring, grinded-out, close kind of game. But here's the thing. These unders, like last year, the Game 7 unders, we got 203s, 204s. You know, sometimes you get a higher. This is at 198. This is by far the lowest total in this series. I think you had a 203 earlier in the series, which was the lowest one. You got they hung a 198 for this game, for Game 7. So you have to be able to go back and say, do I now see value on the over? All right. For me, I mean, we look at each game in this series. Some of them have gone under this 198. I personally, and this is just one of those things that's tough. It's because it's kind of per handicapper, right? It's kind of like, do you feel comfortable with this number? I would probably still bet the under, but there's no way I'm going on this with a full 2-unit bet or, as confident as I would be if this was like 202 or 203, right? We're losing some value here because the books adjust. The books know these trends. They know what's going on. They know where they're getting beat by sharp bettors, and they adjust these lines. So this line being at 198 is a little bit concerning to me. If you want to follow the trend, the under would be the play. I think the better play here is to back the Nuggets coming off of that 45-point loss. If that wasn't a 40-point loss, if they lose that game by 6, let's say, and they're in it, but they just can't get it done late, the Wolves grind it out, get a big home win, this line is not going to be 5 if that happened, right? This line is only 5, and the Wolves, I think, are taking some early money because of what happened in Game 6. But the reality of the situation is that Denver gave them that game. They punted that game away. The 3 games prior to that, they had them completely figured out. And if you expect the Wolves to win, which, listen, anything could happen. It's a Game 7. The Timberwolves can win this game. But then you have to also kind of look at it as we've played 6 games in this series. The Wolves have taken 2 of 3 in Denver. So if they take this Game 7, that means they would have taken 3 of 4 games in Denver. Regardless of who you are, if you have home court advantage, that's hard to do, right? It's hard to do. So for me, I like the Nuggets probably a little bit more. Usually I'm just like, Game 7s, I don't want to even get involved in the side. It's difficult to pick. Give me the under. The total is so low in this game that maybe you still bet the under, but it makes me look at the side more strongly. And I think the Nuggets can cover the spread -5. All right, guys, so that is it for this week's show. Shorter show. We'll be back with some more stuff next week. As we get into the baseball season, we're going to have more stuff coming up. All right, guys, that is it for this week's show. A bit of a shorter one this week. Things are kind of slowing down. Once we get to baseball season, we're really not going to have much else to discuss besides baseball and fights on Saturdays. We might sprinkle in a little WNBA here and there. I know it's a big season with Caitlin Clark's first year and all that, and the other rookies as well, but we'll try to throw in some here and there, but mostly we're going to focus on baseball. It's going to be a long summer. The dog days are approaching. So, manage your bankroll wisely. Don't get too hung up over this, the end of the NBA and NHL seasons, because you're going to need to slowly accumulate those units during baseball so that we can spend them on the NFL in the fall. All right, guys, we'll catch you next week. Thanks for watching.